My name's Garrett Czesak. I was born in Buffalo, New York. My parents lived here in Sandusky and Arcade, New York my whole life. I graduated from Pioneer High School, was an athlete there, and decided to join the military instead of go to college. Joined the Marine Corps as a junior in high school, and then I've continued service since then between active duty and the reserves. I have a wife, Randy, from Delavan, New York, the next town over. Met her through my sister. They were in kindergarten together, and we reconnected after I got out of the Marine Corps the first time. And been married since 2013, and have 2 dogs, 2 cats. So I joined in 2004. Went to boot camp, then went to MCT. Found out I got selected to be a combat engineer, which was my first choice, which was great. So I got to go to combat engineer school in Camp Lejeune, learned how to build stuff, blow stuff up. It was a good experience and has helped out a lot in future stuff as far as engineering. From there, I got stationed in Okinawa, Japan for my first duty station. It was interesting. It was awesome. Had a lot of opportunity to go all over Asia to do training and humanitarian efforts. Got to build the school in Thailand. Got to train with Korean Marines in bridging and demolitions. From there, we got told we were headed to Iraq, so we did some pre-deployment training in Mount Fuji, Japan, which doesn't mirror the terrain of Iraq at all. Showed up to Iraq not knowing what we were going to be doing when we got there. We got told, hey, you guys are going to be digging up IEDs. So that's what we learned to do, and we learned it the hard way. Pretty successful. That was a 9th ESB Alpha Company. It was a great group of guys. We had a really successful deployment. Inside Alpha Company, we didn't have any deaths. We had a few injuries, but we dug up a lot of bombs and made the roads in Iraq a lot safer for the rest of the coalition forces. Closest group of guys that I've ever been with, and we're all still in touch. Facebook groups and meetups and all kinds of fun stuff like that. From there, finished the time in Iraq, got back to Japan, got to see sites in Okinawa a little bit more, and then I got transferred to 1st CEB in Camp Pendleton. That was a whirlwind of a time there because I had a short amount of time left on my active duty contract. Went to train in 29 Palms again for another trip to Iraq. That trip to Iraq was to Ramadi. It was a totally different experience in 2007 to 2008. It was a lot less kinetic, a lot less violence. We had two big attacks the entire time we were there. The first week we were there and the last week we were there. We did a lot of construction and at the beginning of the deployment, just to get told at the end of the deployment to take it all down because we were withdrawing and downsizing the area. So it was an interesting experience. While I was there, re-enlistment was in the cards, but then I found out my dad and my sister both had cancer at the same time. So I came home. I got back from Iraq and came home and hung out with my dad while my sister was in college, and my mom went to live with my sister while she was going through chemo. So everyone got through that, and we're all good now. But it changed my career path a little bit in the Marine Corps. And then after that was settled down, I was working here in the local area and decided, hey, I'll contact a prior service recruiter and see what's available for me. At the time, the war in Iraq was settled down and Afghanistan hadn't picked back up, so they weren't taking my job back onto active duty, and they offered me to change jobs. I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that. Combat engineer's what I enjoy being. So they offered the reserves to me. I was lucky enough to reach out to a unit in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina called the Deployment Processing Center, Reserve Support Unit East. And they accepted me there, and I served the next 7 years there with them. It was a really interesting experience. A, I was new to the reserves, and B, I got put into a leadership role a lot higher than I had ever been on active duty pretty quickly. I was responsible for not only reserve units coming to train on Camp Lejeune, making sure they had all the logistics and all of the ranges that they were going to use and all the safety requirements were met, but also pre-deployment training for all the guys going back out for the surge in Afghanistan. everything from counter IED training, which I had familiarity in, but basic marksmanship, and sometimes these were people that were retired recalls that came back, and like you have older officers come back that haven't touched a firearm since an M1 Grand, and you're handing them a M16 and you take them to the range. And it was interesting to say the least. So it was a hard job. It was a lot of fun, but we did very well. It was a fun unit to be in. But it was different. It was all reservists, and we all rotated in and out, on orders, off orders, hit maximum number of days you could be on active duty in a row. So it was a constantly changing group of people. So it was a nice mix. From there, that's where I got nominated for Reservist of the Year. I had just gotten promoted to gunnery sergeant. That was a interesting experience. It was my first time ever going to DC to receive the award. They had a big gala dinner. Industry and colleges, like not professors, like presidents of colleges and industry CEOs, paid extra to sit with recipients' tables. It was a big black tie to do event, and me and my dress blues and all these people that were excited to sit with me was really, really cool. Me and my wife. And then we got to spend a couple days in DC, check out the monuments and museums and all that stuff. So it was a lot of fun. From there, after my time at the DPC was done, I joined 2MEF in Camp Lejeune because I was living down there. I had, in the time with the DPC, I had got hired by a local company on the civilian side to teach counter IED to Marines out of the Marine Corps Engineer School. So I would bounce back and forth from teaching for a couple years on the civilian side to Marines, right back to hopping in a uniform, training Marines or organizing training for Marines, and then the orders would end and I'd go back and forth to that. So I was never really away from the Marine Corps during that time. It's like just wearing a different shirt, acting the same, and growing a beard in between. But it was a lot of fun. But the counter IED contract was ending, and at the same time, reserve funding is getting cut back because the wars are dying down at that time. So couldn't stay with the DPC, so I went to 2MEF. At 2MEF, I took a role as an operations chief for, at the time, a unit called the MHG. Little did I know the MHG was about to be transformed into a whole different unit called the MIG, Marine Information Group, which is a totally new concept for the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps change is difficult in the Marine Corps. So I was one of the operations chiefs who had to transfer that from what was a headquarters group and kind of a support element to an operational group that was focused on things like information and cybersecurity and stuff. So, but we still had to do a lot of our same support tasks until we could find other people to do them. So it was a lot of juggling to do our new job while still making sure somebody was doing our old job. And that included the MHG was the primary method for the MEF to get reserve forces into and out of places like Iraq and Afghanistan. So a lot of my experience from the DPC carried over as far as training and stuff, but I had to learn quickly the logistical side of booking plane tickets, getting people through customs, working with embassies. And then COVID happened during that time. And then we'd have everything locked in, and then the country would lock down, and we'd have to scramble to find new flights or new methods to get people in, and who at the embassy could we call to try to get clearance to get these people in. Oh, by the way, your Marines can go this way, and your guns have to go this way, and maintaining accountability of all that stuff was interesting. And the same thing with people getting hurt overseas. We had to receive them back. So I would have to lock on the transportation to pick them up in the Virginia area when they get flown back in, and make sure they got appropriate care and all that fun stuff. So that was a big experience. And I did that solid for 3.5 years, and then the funding ran out. So at that time, there was a law called that involved 1,095 days. You could stay on active duty before you counted against active duty NCAP. And at the time, that was still a law. So the funding for me had gone out, so we decided to move back here. We sold our house in North Carolina and moved back here. Right after we sold our house, they removed that law. But it was good because we were glad to be back, family and in this local area. Um, and so since then, I've been with 2MEF headquarters now instead of the MIG, and I'm the future operations chief on the reserve side. I get called in kind of like a substitute teacher now. If there's a key staff member who's going to be out for something or they need some extra help planning, I get called in to help them out down Camp Lejeune. Nice 12-hour drive both directions. Try to go down for a week at a time. The transition back to civilian life is hard. Reserve is it's almost a vacation from civilian life for me to get back to like joining the Marine Corps in 2004 during peak Iraq time. It's kind of a life-changing event, and staying connected both at the time with my civilian job working for the Marine Corps and the reserve stuff keeps me connected. When I first got out in 2008, the economy was in the tank. Finding a good job was hard. I did eventually, but it was hard work and it was a lot of hours. I was working like more than 100 hours a week at a oil field in Pennsylvania while going to college, and it just wasn't very much fun. Had a 4.0 at school. Was working 100 hours a week, and then the professors were mad I wasn't willing to come in and tutor. So I can speak for the Marine Corps. I've been a member of the Individual Mobilization Augmentee program, which is reservists working for active duty units, which is very different than guys that were on active duty joining the reserves. I have had friends that started active duty and transitioned to just reserves, and it's a little bit of a culture shock. The 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year is a little bit different than going in and working with active duty guys. Could it be enjoyable for some people? Probably. It just wasn't for me. I'm going to finish my reserve career out probably without spending any time with an actual reserve unit. Now, for some people, it could work out great. There's a lot of, I've met some fantastic reservists from reserve units, not only militarily, but own big companies, work at big companies, are influential in their local community. So it's a great way to connect, and it's another kind of fraternal organization where you have connections to things. Like if you're a reservist, somebody's hiring somewhere, and can get you a job or can get you help. There's a lot of resources out there that aren't going to be open to you unless you know these people, and it's just a good way to meet people. And sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. So I would recommend the reserves to someone getting off of active duty as long as they enjoyed their time on active duty and understanding that it's going to be different. It's not going to be the same. I was doing it a lot, but they changed the day of the week, and now I work. So I'm trying to sneak out on work lunch breaks when I can to go help. But when I moved back here, there was an organization out of Buffalo called Western New York Heroes. They were working with the American Legion here, and they bring a big truck of food, big truck of food. It used to be to the parking lot here at the VFW. Then we outgrew this, and we went to the Arcade Town Barns to hand out there. But during the winter, we can't use that because they pulling snowplows in and out. So we're using the church Pioneer Christian Fellowship up here. But basically, Western New York Heroes applied for grants through the state in peak COVID time. We helped out both New York State producers of food as well as veterans. Basically, they buy as much New York State food as they can. Then they hand it out to any veteran who comes, shows up with a DD-214 or their VA card. We fill their trunk full of groceries, and we started out doing it every week, and now it's every other week. It used to be on Sundays, now it's on Tuesdays. But it's real nice. There's a lot of older vets, fixed incomes and stuff. It takes a lot of pressure off, especially during COVID time. It was, hey, we're putting it in your trunk. You pop the trunk. You hold your card up against the window. We put it in your trunk and you drive off. And now inflation is pretty high, and some of these guys that are just on Social Security or just on disability, it makes a big difference in their budget. But that's the other interesting thing. It's open to any vet, regardless of income. So anyone who shows up gets a bag and a box full of food. You don't always know what you're gonna get, and sometimes you gotta get pretty creative with your recipes because you get like rutabagas or something, and try not to let it go to waste. 90th Alpha Company for sure. That deployment to Iraq doing route clearance. We worked hard. It was dangerous. It was a bonding experience, but we played hard too. It was a good group of guys doing things we shouldn't be doing just to blow off stress in between missions. Boxing matches inside our living areas and sneaking up behind people with hands full of baby powder and whacking them in the face, or taping people to the rafters of the hooches, like stuff that wouldn't be okay in the Marine Corps now, but it was all fun and games at that time, and it was a lot of fun. Again, it's an amazing group of guys. Stay in touch with a lot of them, from the officers down to the junior enlisted guys like I was at the time. We all stay in touch. Been to each other's weddings, organized get-togethers. Anytime you're driving through a town that one of them lives in, you try to get a hold of them, just to hang out. That by far my favorite duty assignment. I would say expectations are going to be high for you at all times in the Marine Corps. Got to do the right thing for the right reason all the time. Not every decision you make is going to be right, but you got to have a reason you made that decision. Volunteer for things. Try to make the best out of things. There are going to be bad assignments. There's going to be bad days. You just get through them and go on to the next. So in the end, overall, it's going to be a great experience for you. Just volunteer and stay out of trouble. That's the big thing. The Marine Corps is a lot different place than when I joined. Social media really wasn't a thing when I was there. You're going to be miserable at times, but at the end of the tunnel, at the end of that training evolution, or the end of that deployment, or even the end of that night, you're going to be like, wow, look what I accomplished. And that's the one thing about at least the Marine Corps. You never go to bed thinking, oh, I didn't get anything done today. Yeah, connection is important. There's friends and family are great. They help you get through things. But being a vet, especially a combat vet, you're going to have experiences that they don't relate to. So not everyone understands our perspective as especially combat vets, and don't have that experience, and then don't have the side effects of that, the PTSD and being in large groups is stressful, and trash on the side of the road is terrifying. It takes a long time to get past that stuff, and sometimes it comes back in flashes. So it's good to have friends that have similar experiences. And it's good to be able to connect with them, spend time with them, talk about good times, talk about bad times. It helps you get through it. Now, you join one of the local organizations like the VFW, some of the guys will talk about their experiences, some won't. The older veteran generation had different experiences than we did, especially the Vietnam vets, who are the predominant members of the VFWs right now. They're going to talk a little bit less about their service than us, and they came back to a totally different U.S. than we did. So they have different hard times dealing with what they did, but they have hard times too, and just spending time with them is nice, not only for them but for you too. Making the connections, more friends is always a good thing, and someone you can talk to is always a good thing. Like in the civilian sector, people will be super stressed out about something that's relatively minor, and it gets frustrating. Um, like, hey, this thing being an hour late isn't going to end anyone's life. It's not that big. It's so what? Your boss yelled at you for 4 seconds. It's not that big of a deal. You didn't get fired and you didn't die. Well, typically I've been near Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, so Marine Corps balls have always been a thing. And then wife wife got to go to a few, but I always ended up getting pulled for sword duty, so she had to sit alone during the ceremony. So she doesn't love Marine Corps balls too much anymore. Kind of got spoiled for her, but it's a great time. This year I went to Beer Justice Brewing here in Arcade, owned by a Marine. Had about 20, 25 vets get together for that. Drank his beer at half price, and they had cupcakes for us. So we had a good time meeting some new people and hanging out with some friends that I knew that were Marine Corps vets from the area. But it's Marine Corps' favorite day of the year. Every other holiday doesn't matter. It's Marine Corps birthday. I'm sure you've seen the memes. It was my unit nominated me. Our unit had a previous winner, so I knew kind of what to expect when I got there. But it was just recognition for the hard work that I had put in, and not only just what I had done, it's what the team around me was able to help me get done. So we were pushing hundreds and hundreds of Marines and federal contractors out the door to Iraq and Afghanistan at the time, and getting a lot of units trained too. So it was just like a nice to be recognized for all the long hours and hard work, and it was nice for my wife to see it too. She's growing up here in Western New York, Arcade. You don't see a lot of military stuff or understand what it's like, and it she's like kind of let her see like, oh, this is why he comes home late, or this is what he's been doing, and this is why he's coming home stressed, or coming home and going right to bed to get up and do it again the next day. It was kind of nice for me to see her understand a little bit that the it's not pain and suffering, but the little bit of hardship of long hours. Like hardship of long hours isn't a big deal. Like way different than being away on deployment or something like that for a family. But it was nice for her to get to see like the recognition too, because it puts a lot on her too, like taking care of the house and the pets, and dealing with me being stressed or falling asleep right after work. It was nice to see her get to enjoy it too. It was probably the coolest part. And we got some fancy pictures of getting handed the trophy from the Commandant, and shaking hands with Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, and then closing down the bar with the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps after the ceremony. Yeah, it was a good time. It's cool to be nominated, especially by one of my peers from that first unit, who I stay in contact with, who works in DC now. Um, so yeah, it's nice to be recognized, and hopefully other people get to more importantly see this and learn about the things like the VFW and the Legions and opportunities in the reserves, and why they should join the Marine Corps and what the experience was like. It's nice to be recognized, but hopefully it helps some other people out too. Why you should join a veterans organization. The big thing is people with similar life experiences uh, can help you navigate through difficulties in your life, whether it's a physical injury, getting help with the VA, or whether it's a bad day and someone to talk to. It's a level of brotherhood, brother or sisterhood that you had in the service at a monthly meeting, and it's the ceremony, Veterans Day, Memorial Day. It's a time to reflect on your service and reflect with other people. It's just a good thing to do, and the connections that they have throughout the community is real important. And I would encourage the younger generation of vets to get involved, because right now a lot of the organizations, particularly the VFWs, are aging out. Unfortunately, we're losing members faster than we're joining them, and that's not because they didn't pay their dues. The World War II vets and Vietnam vets are becoming more and more scarce. And there's a big gap of time where we only had the Gulf War, and that's not nearly as many vets as the previous wars. And my generation of Iraq and Afghan vets just haven't joined like other generations have yet, and it's understandable, families and kids and stuff like that. Even the Vietnam vets talk about them joining after that stuff was pretty well established and kids were grown and things. But I would encourage you to join as early as you can. Um, Bonus points for the life membership. You save a bunch of money over time, um, and it's just a nice place to talk with people that understand what you're going through. I would highly recommend it. Oh, absolutely. I would do it all over again for sure. The only thing I'd reconsider is that time I didn't reenlist to come take home or come take care of the family, but that was uncertain at the time because we didn't know how bad everything was going to be. Luckily, both my sister and my dad recovered very nicely from cancer. That's the only thing I would reconsider is whether to stay active or join the reserves. But no, I would do it all over again. Um, even with the bad times, there's so many good times. It's still worth it. It's worth doing a little research for veterans to what organizations are in the area. There's a lot of resources out there. You gotta look for them and be willing to put a little effort in to get those resources to help you. Whether it's your local VA rep at the counties or or that all that stuff is available to you. You can't get help if you don't ask for help. Um, I would recommend to seek help if you need it and to help others in need if you know about it.